I bought my first accounting practice in January of 2003. But really, our company goes back to the early 60s. I bought the accounting practice of a gentleman by the name of Michael Cardenas. Michael was an outstanding CPA. In fact, he was appointed by President Reagan to be the administrator of the SPA in the early 80s. And I think that's where I learned advisory services. It was not like your typical accounting practice where you're just cranking out P&Ls and tax returns because clients want more than that.
In today's episode of the Hero of the Hour podcast, Mark has an insightful conversation with Bassim Michael, founder and president of onlyfordentists.com. In this episode, you'll learn about what Bassim has done to become one of the most prestigious accounting firms for dentists in the country, how to find opportunities in a crisis, and his thoughts around competition and differentiation. Something Bassim said that really stuck with me is not all heroes have to wear capes. They just have to put the interests of others before themselves. Get ready for an awesome episode. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Murphy, the founder and CEO of Northeast Private Client Group and the author of 3 books. Thank you so much for joining my podcast. I believe heroes and entrepreneurs require that an anything is possible mindset. And Bassim, you've certainly proved that. Bassim, we've been friends a long time, but when I started my business 37 years ago now, I wanted to be a hero to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinking people. And I've built a business surrounding myself with people like you who wanted to be a hero to the same group. So the first question I have for you is sort of, how do you define a hero, and how are you a hero to your clients?
Well, first of all, Mark, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on your podcast. How am I a hero, or how do I define a hero? I think, a hero doesn't necessarily wear a cape, but heroes are people that really put the interest of others ahead of their own interests. So to put it maybe in a single word definition, they're servants. They serve others. And I think that's what makes a hero is that they serve. And you see it everywhere. If you go someplace, you go to a nice restaurant, or you go to a medical facility or whatever, and you see people just doing their job and going above and beyond. They're servants, and these are my heroes. So that's how I define a hero. Now, how am I a hero to my clients? Again, it's just about going above and beyond, and it's not necessarily, in our line of business. I'm the founder and CEO of Michael and Company CPAs and onlyfordentists.com, and lately also I founded Practice Gauge, which is a data analytics software for healthcare professionals. But going above and beyond means we're not just gonna be doing a tax return or doing the books. I think going above and beyond means educating our clients so that they know where they stand financially, and they understand the numbers. For numbers people like you and I, we take a look at a set of financials, and they tell us a story. And that's what I try to teach my clients, is that what story do the numbers tell? So that's how I think I help my clients, and how I become a hero to them is not just doing the compliance work, but how can we understand the numbers, and what do the numbers mean, and then, okay, well, what can we do about it, right? How can we lower our taxes? How can we deal with low profitability or high overhead, and especially these topics are very important in this economic environment that we're in.
Who, who are some of your heroes? Growing up or today, who sort of like you look up to and you go, that's a hero for me.
Yeah, like when I grow up, I want to be like that person. Well, my dad definitely meets that, criteria. I mean, I've, I come from a family of immigrants, and I've just seen my dad, even though, being very busy at work, and he had a family, but whenever someone needed something, he was there to help. And now he is almost 80 years old, and if someone asks him to do something, he'll do it. He's just that kind of person. And he taught me since I was young that happiness doesn't come when you do things that serves you. Actually, happiness comes when you help others and make others happy. So definitely my dad is my hero. And, no matter how bad his day is, he's always very optimistic and just, dresses like $1 million. He's a very sharp dresser, and and he just loves life, and he loves to help others.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think the gift is the impact you make on other people's lives. Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I used to idolize Willie Mays and Tom Seaver. Growing up in New York, and then when I was an adult, I used to love to watch Mark Messier when he was captain of the Rangers. I think it was like John Wayne on skates. But sometimes as you get a little older, sometimes you think about it's the cops and the firemen and the people who teach children right for wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely,
they're just so many everyday heroes that wake up every day just trying to make a life better. The lives better of all the people they touch. And that's sort of, as I keep thinking about it, redefining and thinking in my own mind, it always opens up to other possibilities of not only who heroes are, but also who heroes aren't, because we have a lot of anti-heroes, unfortunately, in this country too. One of the things I talk to you is, you have, one of the preeminent dental practice or accounting practices in the country for dentists. I know that wasn't always the case. How did you decide to kind of narrow it down to just the dental industry? And I just wanted to take me through the kind of thought process of that, because I if I understand correctly, at one time you had more of a general practice.
Yes. So I bought my first accounting practice in January of 2003. So in fact, we're going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary here at Michael and Company. But really, our company goes back to the early 60s. I bought the accounting practice of a gentleman by the name of Michael Cardenas. Michael was an outstanding CPA. In fact, he was appointed by President Reagan to be the administrator of the SPA in the early 80s. So in my first office, we had pictures of Mike with President Bush, President Reagan, and just it was just an amazing practice. And it was more of and I think that's where I learned advisory services. It was not like your typical accounting practice where you're just cranking out P&Ls and tax returns, because clients want more than that. So that was my first accounting practice. I bought it, and I kid you not, Mark, I doubled it. We doubled it in the first year. I mean, wow. That was amazing. It was a small boutique practice. And then one of our clients probably made up about 30% of our practice. And it was a general practice. We had manufacturers and all kinds of clients. And then that client sold to a Fortune 500. And overnight, I saw my revenues drop by 30%. So that's when I learned that I would rather have $10,000 clients than one $100,000 client.
Right. No,
So
no. Well, that must have been very painful because that 30% is all the profit. It's your salary. It's the profit. It's the growth in
absolutely
the business. I mean, many companies don't even come back from that.
right. Yeah. And I think that was maybe one of the lessons I learned from that as well, is that I was just so focused on this initial or success, or maybe if you want to call it beginner's luck that I had. So anyway, in 2005, so 2 years later, we bought another small practice again to kind of make up for the loss and to continue to grow. And that was a traditional accounting practice. It was just a bookkeeping and tax practice, and I know Mike warned me not to do that, but I didn't heed to his advice. And again, I was young. I was, when I started my practice, I think I was 27 or 28. So, I cared more about being busy than having a quality practice. So anyway, we bought that second practice out of desperation. Oh, and by the way, the first practice that I bought was an earn-out practice. So we bought it using the earn-out method. And it was a win-win because, as you can imagine, when we doubled revenues, Mike basically got paid twice as much as he would have. But it was great. I didn't have any loans on my balance sheet, and it was wonderful. And then the second practice was, again, a traditional one. It was seller financed, but it was not an earn-out. And it just, it was a painful transition, but we still managed to keep the clients. And
Wow.
in fact, to this day, we still have a couple of those clients. So anyway, fast forward a year later, and then when I realized, okay, now I need to grow organically. So me and my partner, he was back then he was an intern. We went through our client list and just started grading our clients. And it was not just on fees, but it was also, how do we like working with their industries? Are we able to make a difference for them? Are they easy to get a hold of? And lo and behold, at that time, I think we had like 4 dentists. The 4 dentists like scored A's on everything. So we said, okay, from now on, we're going to start, organically growing and focusing on dentists. So I built a website called onlyfordentists.com. And then I started going, and that was back in 2007, I believe. So still online marketing was still very new.
Sounds like a dating site. No.
Yeah. Maybe.
But what was that? So when that didn't exist, tell people what Only for Dentists was.
Only for Dentists, just a website. It was, we wanted to make it very clear that we're not a general practice. We're just going to focus on dentists, but by meaning we're not just going to do, for dentists, we're not just going to do a P&L and a tax return. So we decided that from that point forward to be customer focused. So I started taking out my dentist clients, the 4 of them. They were all friends that maybe I went to high school with or whatever, and found out what did they want beside a tax return and a P&L. And I found out dentists are very competitive. So they wanted to know, how are we doing in comparison to our peers? Well, so I developed an Excel spreadsheet that had a dashboard. Oh, another thing I found out that most people don't read the P&L. We send them the financials and they put it in the drawer. And, so I wanted to do something that fits on a single page that gives them all the key statistics, that financial statistics, not necessarily, anything like that has to do with, clinical stuff, mainly financial data, right? So that's where we developed that dashboard, and then we found out they wanted us to be proactive on tax planning, and so we started doing that as well, and just standardized it, and it just grew from 4 clients to now over 200.
Well, that is amazing growth. You obviously, it's funny. In fact, I don't believe in competition. I
Mhm.
believe in differentiation, and clearly that dashboard is a differentiator for you and others. But one of the things I wake up every day, I start like in my world, I say financial services firms. I kind of in my mind have that there's four financial firms lined up one after the other, after the other, after the other. And why would that client pick me over the other three firms? What do you see in the world of competition or differentiation that others don't? What is, how do you view your business and why people choose you?
I think they choose us because of the people that we have, honestly. And again, we're not for everyone. So I can't, I mean, but I think the comment that we hear from most of our clients, it's not because we're like the smartest accountants or
I tend to disagree, but I will disagree violently.
but honestly, I think it's because we just have good people. We do our best to treat people the way we want to be treated. I think that's really what it comes down to. And I put quality ahead of growth. So I at the end of the day, I'm a professional, and I take pride in the work that we do, and hopefully we're making a difference in our clients' lives. And the way I see it, the work that you and I do, we do very important work because our job is really to help clients clients worry a lot about their financial situation, and they worry a lot about, hey, am I going to be able to retire? Am I going to be able to make payroll next week? So I think we're kind of like an insurance policy more than anything else. We help people sleep better. And that's how I take my job very seriously. And I try to, let my team know that we're not in the business of producing financial statements or producing tax returns. We're in the business of giving people peace of mind. People worry about their taxes.
Yeah, it's funny. I have an accounting background. I wish I would have sat for the CPA exam 35 years ago when I knew what a widget was. But but I think my background's really, my degree is in finance, and I studied a lot of economics. And I almost think that although those are really valuable tools, I think what we really are is psychologists. I always say I'm like one of the best paid social workers in the world, in that you're there, keeping people emotionally fit, and you're helping them make wise decisions. I mean, that's what we do, right? I mean, that's what you do. I mean, every day.
Absolutely. And sometimes you encourage people, hey, you're doing a great job. Look at your numbers. You're doing wonderful. Hey, how did you do this? And sometimes, hey, you need to cut this out. So sometimes also you gotta tell it like it is.
Are you what do you see, like having, a commonality of dealing with dentists? What are like the one or two or three things that that are the same issues that seem to come up again and again and again, where you go, that's the third time I've dealt with it, and it's only 10 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah. That's the one that's coming up a lot is Delta. And again, I'm maybe I shouldn't be saying
Delta. Well, Delta Dental, you're talking about the insurance company.
I don't know if we should even be mentioning names, but yeah, I mean, it's just not working. We're seeing it, especially as we're doing year-end reviews right now and looking at numbers. If you're picking up a lot of patients, and those patients are Delta patients or PPO patients, and basically all, the other dentists within, like, say, a 3 or 5 mile radius are not in network, and you're happy because you're picking up all those patients, you shouldn't be happy, because the conversation that I'm having with a lot of clients is that we're seeing that they're working harder than ever, and their profitability is going down, because they're having trouble finding good staff, and in many cases, to control their costs, they're just ending up doing more themselves. and they have a lot of demand because a lot of these patients that are now want to use a dentist that's in network are coming to them, and so they're working harder and making less money, and we're having this conversation 2 or 3 times a day now, that maybe you should consider something about maybe consider going out of network.
Well, that's
Yeah.
I've heard that more than a couple of times. I was wondering, you said you bought the practice first in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Technology has gotten so darn good. What was the geographic sort of where most of your clients were geographically? Were they California based where you are? Because now, what's the challenge of running a national practice like you run right now?
That's a very good question. Yeah, well, I would say most of our clients were local, right? Local to Fresno, California.
Right.
But then we had a few clients that the larger clients were out of town, the manufacturing clients. But once I opened my second practice in San Jose, in Cupertino, I found out because of traffic, and that was again early on, like in maybe 2011, those clients didn't want to take a half a day from work to come and meet with me. So we adopted, using Zoom or one of the, cloud-based meeting apps. We adopted that early on, probably 7 or 8 years before COVID. And that was our mode of communicating with clients. And I think that's what helped us grow nationally, is that, we standardize the onboarding process. We don't start working with clients until we have access to, their bank accounts, their credit cards, their payroll information. And it kind of like just made gathering and collecting information much easier. And I think the model was very appealing to the dentists, because dentists, out of all the professionals, they really value their time, and they like the idea that, hey, I don't have to get in the car and take time off from seeing patients and go and meet with my accountant. So I think that was a good lesson to learn early on, or an observation that we decided to kind of capitalize on. The challenges are, now we have to also deal with tax laws in different municipalities and states. So that becomes challenging. And so we're trying to also, we prefer working in states that maybe don't have a lot of income tax issues, like Texas, Florida,
Right.
And Nevada, but Washington. But I think so far we work maybe in close to 20 states.
That's I know it's from coast to coast, but
Yeah.
that's fantastic. I think about the Zoom. One of the things I used to think, I was a belly to belly guy prior to COVID, where I'd literally been on a plane at least once a week, maybe more, to see clients all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge I always had is, that I always thought, and I still think you can, that you can really have transformative relationships when you get to reach out and touch someone. You can go have dinner with them. You can go to a ball game with them. You can really spend, as much time as you can with them. But this Zoom has been such an effective device at not only being a communication system, but a transportation system into the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've come to the conclusion that I prefer a Zoom over a conference call. I'd rather look at somebody and see if they're nodding, or see if they're with us, or all of those things. But I'm actually been pleasantly surprised that, it's one thing for people like you and I who have known each other forever, conference call or a Zoom, we can, we know each other well, so there's no surprises. But with new clients, do you see any difference?
No. In fact, I think I probably have not met 60% of my clients face to face, like in person. We've always just talk on the phone or do Zoom. And I since COVID, I think people are very comfortable with Zoom. In fact, I usually give clients access to my calendar, and I give them an option to either do a phone call or a Zoom. And overwhelmingly, all of them choose Zoom.
Right. It's the thing about the pandemic. I think that if we had started, if like at least in my firm, if we had started this say 10 years ago, it would not have gone well, because what the pandemic forced, it forced people that are 70, 80, 90 years old know how to get on Zoom to go Zoom with their grandchildren.
Yes.
Everybody, that everybody learned how to use the system. Where if it was you and I 10 years ago trying to teach our clients how to use the system, we might have come with some resistance, or people would not have been able to get it. So I think that all the factors came together to go do that.
Absolutely.
I don't have a tie on today. I have a suit on, but I don't have a tie. But I probably the first 20 years of my career, I didn't wear a sport jacket. I wore a suit and tie every day to work, partly because I was young and I wanted to let people know I was serious. But I think the tie manufacturers and suit manufacturers in this country are not doing so well in the new economy.
Yeah, and California has always been probably business casual a long time ago. Like, throughout my career, even when I was interviewing at big national firms, the dress code was, basically dress the same as your client, right? So, but I think the East Coast and even some parts of like Texas, for example, I feel like they dress up a lot more than us on the West Coast.
Yeah, no, I think that's the case. I also, I don't know what you think or what you're advising clients, but an awful lot of people think we're either in recession or maybe going into a recession or tough times in the next year.
Mm-hmm.
What are you advising clients, and what do you think is going to happen? I mean, not that you have a crystal ball, but it's people look to you as an opinion leader and a thought leader I mean, I think many times they're paying you to peek around corners. So I want you to peek around corners for our audience and tell them what you think.
Right. Well, I think, and I enjoy reading. Right? I read a lot, and I think as a country, we're facing major challenges. So I think, if we want to start talking about, what are we in a recession? And I think we kind of need to kind of maybe understand what the macro view is, right? And I think some of the challenges that we're seeing, for example, these huge government deficits. I mean, I think our deficit this year is what 1.5, 1.6 trillion. It's just huge. And so how are we financing that? I mean, we're printing money. I don't even think, and it's going to be interesting to see once the Fed tightens, and if the Fed is not going to be buying all that government debt, it will. What do you think? Is the bond market going to be affected by all that government debt? I mean, is the government going to be competing with businesses and individuals for capital? I don't know. So I there is potential that maybe possibly, I don't know, if the Fed does what they say they're going to do, which is continue to tighten. I mean, do you think that the capital markets could tighten as well? And
I mean, I think I think if anybody had a crystal ball, I would say the best time to bet on Monday Night Football is Tuesday morning. But I do think that one of the things I do think is that where my mindset always goes, Bassim, is I never ignore problems. You can't have rose-colored glasses or be Pollyannish and go, oh, these problems, just pretend they don't exist. That certainly does not work. But I think my mind also goes to, well, what's great about that? Meaning if we don't go into a recession, that's great. There will be opportunities. But if we do go into a recession, I think there'll be opportunities.
Absolutely.
For people that there'll be well-run companies will have the ability to acquire other companies not doing as well. I think the labor market won't be as tight as it's been. So, a lot of businesses can't grow because they can't find great employees. I think there'll be a bigger pool of people to choose from. I think there'll be a lot of opportunity. And I think sort of as entrepreneurial thinking people, I think what we have to do is be able to coach our clients to make sure that they've properly protected themselves. They've got enough liquidity, and they've made all the right financial and life decisions. Right. And then be aware but be open to opportunities for
Totally.
for growth.
And then, the biggest thing I'm advising my clients is that they also need to assume that it's not going to be business as usual. So, if you ran a business the last 10 or 15 years, where we all got accustomed to very low interest rates, I don't think maybe for a while that's going to be around. So I think that's also going to make growing a little more difficult because we all got used to cheap money. And I think that could potentially, if that continues, that could potentially affect valuations and of multiples and things like that. But by the same token, with these challenges, like you said, there's opportunities, but the key is you got to stick to fundamentals, right? So we're advising clients that you need to have plenty of cash. My bare minimum for cash in a business bank account is 2 months, at least 2 months of operating cash, and personally somewhere between 3 to 6 months for your personal expenses. The other, so yeah, I mean, that's a challenge I think that we're facing is the government deficits, and again, I mean, that could make inflation, I think, persistent. The other challenges that we're going to be facing as a country is that the country's divided, right? And again, maybe thank God that there's a good possibility that we may have a divided government, and hopefully a divided government doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to continue to be a divided people or divided country, and maybe that will force Washington to compromise a little bit with the other side and maybe get the business of the people done. So I think I'm optimistic with that regards. We'll be able to tell, if but I'm kind of actually excited about the prospect of divided government, because at least Washington now cannot do anything that can complicate our lives for the next couple of years. To me, I think that's a good thing, and it should stabilize, I think, the economy. And I think if that happens, maybe things are not going to be as bad. Not that one party is worse than the other or vice versa, but I think we definitely need to put
gridlock. A lot of people think gridlock is good. I mean,
right.
There are some things that are empirical. As an example, if you bought a house a year or so ago, you might have gotten a mortgage that was sub 3%. And now that mortgage is 6 or 6.5 or even 7%.
Yeah.
People don't buy a house.
Go higher.
Yeah, they don't buy a house price. They buy a payment, and you can't afford to pay the same that you did a year ago when rates were under 3%. I think it's the same thing, and in the commercial space, particularly for your clients that are dentists. I think between Amazon and the internet disrupting commercial real estate and interest rates, and a lot of those deals that were done on variable loans at 2 or 3% market caps that are going to readjust and they're going to be underwater. There was a lot of places in this country where it was impractical for a dentist to own a building because it was just too valuable and too expensive. And I think that you have to do dentistry live. It's hard. You can't do virtual dentistry. You can't Zoom up. You can't Zoom an implant. And so I think that there's going to be an opportunity to create wealth in real estate for some doctors in metropolitan areas that did not have that opportunity prior.
Absolutely. And again, that goes back to, having enough cash on hand. So when these opportunities come, you're able to make the deal work.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, especially with banks. I mean, you mentioned liquidity, having enough cash. I mean, banks are notorious for only lending money to people that don't need money. So you want to be in a position that you're using it as a tool, not because out of desperation.
Yeah. And again, I think it's always good to go back to fundamentals. So, I mean, look at cash flow. Cash flow is very important. Because that's really how banks also evaluate the deal. They care more about cash flow than valuations, especially in the dental practice arena. So I'm also optimistic, about, like you said, I think the labor market hopefully will start loosening up a little bit. Again, a lot of our problems that we're experiencing now are policy driven, right? And I think if both political parties kind of sit down and hash things out and maybe compromise, I think with changes in policy, we could definitely see improvements both on the energy side, which affects inflation quite a bit, on the budget deficit, which again affects inflation. And then the other thing is maybe we need to look at a good immigration policy, because we're not bringing in the labor that we need from immigration, and I think that's also affecting shortages. So I definitely again, I come from an immigrant background, and I support immigration, and I think as long as we're bringing people that help our economy and help our country and will contribute to the growth of this country, I think they're more than welcome, and we should have an open door for them. These are things I think if we change our policies on these things, maybe we're not going to have as bad of a recession as everyone is talking. So, we'll see. But again, the economy is very resilient, Mark. I mean, for the most part, when I'm reviewing numbers year to date, clients are still very profitable, and dentistry still is a really good business. You know that dentistry is one of the most profitable businesses in America still.
I actually do know that. And, I also know that a recession or a pandemic or any disruption in business always becomes a magnifier of who you are. And then you'll see the very best and brightest continue to just use this as an opportunity to massively grow their empires. And the folks that are mediocre or less will use the recession or a pandemic or any other excuse of why things aren't they're going.
And that's right on. I mean, we've been in this business for a long time, and we've been through a few recessions. And I can tell you that for many of our clients back in 2008, and the recession was not an issue. If anything, we will always encourage them, hey, this is the time to double down. You need to invest in marketing, invest in yourself, in your education, invest in your team, and invest in the practice, upgrading your equipment. Now's the time. There's always good deals. And you need to capitalize on these opportunities.
I have to laugh with this podcast. I can't get up, but I noticed that there's sun coming into my office, so it's distracting that I've got like a shine of light through my head. I'm hoping it'll be that people think I'm angelic and it's coming from God, but I
was going to say it's a distracting.
That's a great thing when you're not a professional media person. You're just somebody that wants to, create a better life for all the people you touch, like you and I do. That's why we are brothers from another mother. And all I want to do is I just want to wish you and your family just continued happiness and success and love. And I just feel you're one of my heroes, and I'm just so happy to have you in my life, Bassim. And thank you for everything you are to me and to all the people that we work with.
Thank you, Mark. And again, you're probably one of the people that when I grow up, I want to be like you. So you're absolutely a hero to me as well. And I look up to you. And I'll tell you this, Mark. I know if I'm ever in trouble, you're on my speed dial. So
I'd be there for you. I think the challenge that for folks like us and a lot of other good people, I'd like to put us in the good people category, is that it's when you need people. When people are riding high, everybody's got a lot of friends, and I always remember that it's when times are tough, that's when you see who's with you and who's not with you.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad to have you in my foxhole. And
likewise, and best of luck to you and your family and your team. You guys are amazing. And one last thing too is that one of the reasons I love working with you is that you're not necessarily just selling financial products. You're a lot more. You're an advisor, a life coach, and I haven't met too many wealth advisors that recommend that their clients buy real estate. They usually just want them to keep buying stocks and bonds. And so again, you look at the financial health and of your clients as a whole, and that's what makes you very special and your team very special to
Well,
me.
I don't know. I'm glad. I'll let my mother know that somebody else thinks I'm special other than her. But it's funny that book, the third book we have coming out in February. I mean, to me, if you only had $1 to invest, the reason I named that book "The Ultimate Investment" is because I think owning a business is not only the first place I'd look as an entrepreneur to invest money, but also it's one of the, as a tax professional like yourself, it's one of the last great tax shelters out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That and real estate, really.
Too. Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, our businesses have been probably the best investments that we've ever made. Yeah,
well,
totally.
Well, continue to help people. And Bassim, thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
You too, Mark.
Thank you, my friend.